everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Leaderboard. This is Tray Honeycutt. Thanks for jumping on. This is going to be episode 6. The title of today's episode is The Main Thing. And so last week, we covered a lot of information, and I got some questions from people about really just daily agenda. And I think that's really important to look at. So it made me think about what the main things really are in the business. You know, the key to this is to major on the minor things and don't major on minor things and don't minor on major things. And so the trick really is on a daily basis, what are the few things that are going to get you closer to where you want to go? Because we talked about last week how consistency is really a myth. Everybody's consistent. It's just they're consistently doing things that move them further away from where they actually want to go. And the reason why is they don't know where they want to go. So once you've identified where you want to go, what are the few things that you could do every single day to get you closer to where it is that you actually want to end up? And what I found out was you need to identify what those things are and then do those first thing, do the hard things first early on in the day. And then we're going to talk about what the fuel is really to the business that allows you to get to where you want to go. Because we talk about so many things that are really simple, because this business is super simple. There's only a few things that really matter. And it's easy to get distracted by overthinking it or overcomplicating it. So for me, one of the things that I've looked at during times of great growth in the business, because I've made a lot of mistakes at this, believe me, made like a lot of mistakes at this. But one of the things that I've identified in times of great growth is I had a very regimented morning routine. There were certain things that I would do every single day that allowed me to focus on the proper activity and do that even when I didn't feel like doing it. And so in this business, you got to learn how to act your way into feeling, not wait until you feel good before you do it. And so by identifying the activities that are going to get you closer to where you want to go on a daily basis, and then at the end of the day, going back through and just saying to yourself, if everybody did what I did today, would it be a successful day? And as long as you can say yes to that on a daily basis, then you're moving closer to where you need to go. And then that day is a win. And the goal is just to have more wins than losses. Everybody's human. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody gets off track. The key to this, though, is just to be off track less. And so part of my morning routine, what I would look at is I would basically write down 5 things every day that would move me closer to where it is I was wanting to go. So if that's a board member, then what are those five things? Well, one of the things is today, no matter what, I'm going to take 5 people from not knowing about FFL to knowing about FFL. The next thing is I'm going to follow up with people in my pipeline that are thinking about joining the business. The next thing is I'm going to deal with problems in the business before they get too out of hand. So if there's conversations that I need to have with people that are preventing agencies or other agents from growing, then I'm going to have those conversations. The next thing is who can I help get leads in their hands? And what's that conversation going to look like? So-and-so's been not investing enough in leads, and I need to have a conversation with Bob, Cindy, Joe, Sue, and talk to them more about how they need to invest more in leads. The 5th thing might be I need to plug into the conference calls. I need to promote the conference calls. I need to do recognition. I need to recognize people today that are having success in the field. That's what it would be like now. All right. But back when maybe I wasn't even vice president, what does that look like on a daily basis? Well, if it's a Monday, I need to set my 15 appointments. If at the end of the day, I could say, hey, I set my 15 appointments. Was that successful? I need to be able to say, yes, that's a win. I need to make sure I'm at the office early with my leads printed out. That's something that's going to move me closer to where I want to go. I want to be there by 7:15 so I can start dialing at 7:30. And then whenever I do that, that's a win. See, the reality is a big part of this business is just building self-trust. What happens is too many times we fall into these ruts where we said we were going to do something and we didn't do it. So what I'm trying to get you to do is just break it down to a few things that if you did that on a daily basis, and you can just check off those small wins on a regular basis, that ultimately you're winning. That's really all it is. It's like write it down, break it down, write it down, and then complete those simple things before you do anything else. Like, what's the most important thing on Monday? The most important thing on Monday is to make sure I have my 15 appointments. If I don't have enough leads to get 15 appointments, well, that's the rub. I need to make sure that Sunday, when I do my morning routine, that, hey, I need to make sure I buy enough leads. The Thursday before, hey, I need to make sure I buy my leads for Monday. And then when I do that, check off the win column. Now, leads are the fuel for, well, before I get into that, let's talk about what the rest of that morning routine would look like. So I'm writing down 4, 5, 6 things that I could do every single day to move me closer to where I want to go. And then the other thing I'm looking at is I believe wholeheartedly in the idea of reciprocity. So the other question I'm asking myself is, what can I do to empower and encourage others so that they can become the best version of themselves on a daily basis? What are 2 things that I could do to do that, you know? And whether that's posting in the Facebook group, recognizing people, cheering people on that I don't get any reward from, anything back from, helping somebody that can't do anything in return to help me, just anything I can do to get the focus off of myself. That I try to do that every single day. And then the third thing that I would look at the end of the day to put in the win column is, what did I do today that I could do better tomorrow? Like, where did I never want to beat myself up. I'm always looking at progress, not perfection. But what did I do today that I could do a better job of tomorrow? Or what did I learn from what I did today that I can do something different tomorrow that could get me closer to where I want to go? And then on a daily basis, I'm bookending the days. That's all it is. I'm just, at the end of the day, I took 5 people from not knowing to knowing. I had 5 difficult conversations that I didn't want to have to help empower somebody to buy more leads. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I promoted for the event in Sacramento. Whatever, I personally called people that were brand new, had conversations with them, and talked to them about their business without being distracted by a bunch of other things to do. Like, I prioritize my activity on a daily basis that I'm going to get the most bang for the buck. That's really all I'm trying to do. And at the end of the day, I'm just going through that list of things and I'm checking it off as a win when I did it. That was a win. That was a win. That was a win. I don't check it off. I actually put win, W-I-N. I won that. And at the end, if I do that enough, you compile a year of doing that, it's impossible not to get to where you want to go, because you're focused, laser focused on the things that are going to get you closer to where you want to go, not further away. And that in turn makes you consistently doing the things that you should be doing to get you closer to where you want to go. But there's a fuel to this business that is the main fuel. So if I were to say, Trey, let's call beyond the leaderboard today the main thing. What's the main thing? And here's the answer to that. We've discovered that the main thing in this business is leads. It's leads. The people that succeed in this business are the people that invest the most money on leads. So a trap that people fall into is they try to sidestep that. Like, there's no sidestepping the fact that if you need to spend $1,000 a week on leads. That's what it is. You need to spend $2,000 a week on leads. Hall of Fame producers spend between $2,000 and $3,000 a week on leads. You say, what kind of leads? It doesn't really matter what kind of leads. One of the things I learned from just going to sales training, I think I learned it first from Ryan Montato. He's the first person ever explained it to me like this. But he said, Trey, it's about the lead budget. It's not about the lead type. It's about the lead budget. If you have $1,000 a week to spend on leads, spend your $1,000 a week on leads. If that means that I have to buy $800 $50 final expense leads that are 6 months old from the CRM, then that's what I'll buy. If that means that I have to buy 80 to $100 $11 instant internet leads, then that's what I'll buy. If that means my lead budget is 18 brand new mortgage leads for $1,000, then that's what I buy. And if I buy $1,000 worth of leads, I'm going to issue 5 times what I bought. Now, some people are much better, so they'll issue 10 times what they buy. So if you bought $2,000 worth of leads, that person would issue 20,000 that week, right? Me, if I buy $2,000 a week in leads, I'm issuing 10. That's what it is. For some reason, that scares people. And I remember when I was new, that scared me too, because I didn't have any money. But what I want you to understand is it's like this, like the only leads you actually purchase are the first ones. After that, your customers pay for them. It's like at the gas station, on the counter, they have that box of Hershey bars, right? Well, the only box of Hershey bars that sit on the counter at the gas station that the owner of the gas station actually purchased was the first box. After that, he just used the profit from the other Hershey bars to buy new Hershey bars and replenish his inventory. So he was only out of pocket for the initial investment. That's the way it works with leads. You don't buy the leads, your customers buy the leads. And if you're not investing properly, this can be a brutal business because you have to make sure that you have an inventory of leads. Buy more leads than what you need, and you'll have more money than what you need. Don't get caught up on what type of leads they are. Just make sure you're investing the money and working the leads, because once you spend the money, it activates the work. If I spend $2,000 I don't have on a credit card and I'm scared, I'm going to work those leads a lot harder, believe me, than if I had $200,000 in my bank account and spent $2,000. Like, you work it a lot harder when you don't have any money, by the way. That's a trick. People say, I don't have any money. That's perfect. That's when you'll do the best. Like, back against the wall. Because what happens is in this business, people go from like surviving. They go from crisis to surviving, and then surviving to thriving. That's typically what we see. And people are so comfortable in crisis. That's what I've noticed. See, when you're in crisis and you don't have any money, you're super freaking resourceful. Like, I remember when we didn't have any money, like, I could keep my gas on for like 6 months beyond the time that they should have shut it off. Like, I could figure out a way to talk to the right person, to pull the right strings, to put a little bit on it, to make sure that I can keep that sucker going, right? Same thing with the electricity. Like, when I have any money, I could rob Peter to pay Paul like nobody's business, because I was super resourceful. You got to be resourceful when it comes to leads as well. So when I started in this business, I pawned my wife's engagement ring to get enough money to go buy leads. And you know what happened? That first 6 weeks, I made like $13,000 because I spent money that I didn't have on leads with faith that it was going to work. And I don't want to mislead anybody. I don't want anyone to think that you can be successful at this without buying leads. You can't. You can't be successful at this without investing and putting money back into the business. There's a few things that all the top producers and all the top agencies have in common, okay? One is they sell insurance at a high level personally. I sold insurance at a high level until I could get out of the field, right? I wish I could be back in the field. I miss going and running appointments. I ran for a day last month. I sold like 3,500. It was cool. I had a day, but I miss going out and helping families. That's what it was all about. That is the cornerstone of what it is that we do. And hopefully I see so many people that are just like, man, I just can't wait to get out of the field. I don't know why. Like why do you want to get out of the field so bad? People used to push me all the time on that. Like, they would go to Andrew and say, Andrew, if Trey's doing so good, why is he still in the field? And Andrew's like, because he's not an idiot. Like, he can make an extra $15,000 just running a day and a half a week on top of what else he's doing. Like, who wouldn't do that? Like, why does everybody think that they're so good that they don't have to go run appointments anymore? So the main thing is helping families with insurance protection, right? And in order to do that, you have to have leads of people to talk to. And I don't want to mislead anyone into thinking that they can have the success that they're looking for without investing. If you're not willing to invest and put money back into the business, it's not going to work. Like, your main goal is, how do I make enough to pay my bills and then make a bunch more than that so that I can turn around and invest that back in the business? Now, the main thing that I'm looking to invest back in the business is leads. I've always helped people with leads. I've helped myself with leads. I help other people with leads. I get leads into people's hands so that they can go run the leads, turn a profit, and then get to a point where they need to be, where they can take over and buy more leads so they can keep doing it over and over and over again. Because I want to feed the machine long enough. If you feed the machine long enough, the machine will feed you. That's the way it works. But none of it works unless you buy leads. $1,000 to $2,000 a week in leads is the magic number. And we know that now. People are nervous about, you know what scares me? It's not the person that goes out and writes $20,000 their first week. That doesn't scare me. What scares me is the person that struggles through it and never really gets ahead. Those are the people that end up rolling you debt. Those are the people that end up not making it. Those are the people that have the hardest time. Like if I could go back and do it all over again, one of the biggest mistakes I made was I tried to model my run schedule and my results based off what Paul and Andrew were doing. So when I started, we didn't have lead flow like we do today. We didn't have all the options like we do today. When I started in the business, Paul and Andrew could go Hall of Fame off of 2 to 3 days a week in the field just on direct mail leads because that's all we had. And when I started, my thing was, well, hey, I have to model what they do, so I'm just going to run Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Because even back then, it wasn't a big deal to nobody really focused on running the weekends. And then Sean Mike started pouring into everybody and said, listen, you know why I crushed everybody in the field when I was in the field? Because I would run every day because I didn't have any money. And he looked at me one time and he goes, Trey, your problem is you don't have any money and you need to run like every single day. But I'd gotten into this habit of like not just trying to copy somebody's schedule, rather than what I should have done was put the odds in my favor, ran 4 days a week, dialed on Monday, booked Tuesday and Wednesday, dialed on Thursday, booked Friday and Saturday, and gotten myself in a position where I could write the kind of production that Andrew and Paul wrote work in 2 days because they'd already been in the business for 5 years. So I was comparing myself and my schedule to someone that was already Hall of Fame level production, and they were able to do it because they could write annuities, they could write advanced markets, they could write mortgage protection, they could do final expense, they had policy reviews they would do on a yearly basis. And here I was just starting out thinking that the secret to success was just making sure I had 6 appointments on Tuesday and 6 appointments on Wednesday. And sure enough, out of those 12 appointments, I'd sit on 7 and I'd sell 4,000. Well, and then back then we didn't have instant issue either. So maybe only 2,500 of that would go through, and I would issue 10 to 15,000 a month, and I would struggle and I would struggle and I would struggle. If you're not issuing $15,000 a month, like you're not making any money. Like when you issue 20, you start to make money. When you issue 40, you're really profitable. And that's what I've realized over time is you take Hall of Fame producers in the team like Stephen Yee. That's what Stephen Yee discovered, is that the difference between like writing 30,000 and 75,000 in a month wasn't a big difference. It was just making sure his schedule was tight with appointments, and he was really maximizing the 2 days on the phone and the 4 days in the field, and making sure he had the proper lead flow to support that. So maybe that meant he spent an extra $3,000 a month on leads to go from 40K to 75K in a month, but the profitability was through the roof, if that makes sense. So I want everybody to understand that the name of the game is leads. It's leads, it's leads, it's leads. Doesn't matter what kind of leads. It just matters you have enough leads to set enough appointments. And the way that you make sure that that occurs is that you have to spend the money. When you spend the money, you will activate the work. Now, people say, well, I don't have any money. Well, I don't believe that. It's not that you don't. Everybody's resourceful when they think it's going to work. Like if there was a golden ATM machine in the middle of the desert and I could drive past that puppy and it called me by name, Trey, come over. And I went over there and there was a sign that said insert $100, and I put $100 in that sucker and it spit out 1,000. How many people would cover up the camera and do it again? Like everybody would. Like if I knew, hey, if I put 1,000 in and it's going to spit out 5, I would just see how many times I could do that, because I believed because there was a sign on there that said, hey, this is a gold name machine, ATM machine. It has Trey's name on it. You know, trust it. And then when it happens, the more times that happens, the more I'm willing to do it over and over and over and over again. So it's really just a matter of belief. If I guaranteed you, like if I said, hey, you know what, Bob, if you show up Monday and Thursday, you put in 20 hours a week on the phone a week, and you go help clients for 25 hours a week, and you have to drive 2 hours to commute to where you're going, and you do that every week for 52 weeks, and I'll give you $300,000 at the end of the year, and I put that in writing and like a stamp on it and says, this is absolutely going to happen. It's contractually bound, and you just have to do the work, and you're an employee. And if you do this, you get that $300,000. Then you would come in and you would do that work faithfully, because it's a guarantee, right? Because somebody said, hey, I'm going to sign off on that. That's going to happen. Like, you'll do that as an employee. What I need you to do is show up with that same type of belief when you're investing the money into the leads each week, if that makes sense. Like that's all it is. I just need you to believe enough that that really is the pot at the end of the rainbow that you're looking for. And then once you believe that, you'll do the work. And the way it works in this business is when you invest the money in the lead, that puts you in a position where you have to do the work. And then as you do the work, you start making the money, and then your belief goes up, and it's a revolving cycle of, you know, I did this, I got this reward, I did this, I got this reward. And then it becomes predictable, and you start to believe it, and your expectations are right. There's two things that mess you up more than anything else. It's unrealistic expectations and misplaced dependencies. I talk to people every week that are like, yeah, I'll get started if you buy me leads. No, fool, you don't want somebody buying you leads. That means they're buying you at wholesale and they're selling you at retail. That's not what you want. You want to be an independent agent that's buying his own leads, that's taking all the profit. You don't want somebody with their thumb on you as an employee saying, yeah, I'll buy you leads, but I'm going to put your comp way down here. Why would you want that? That just tells me your belief isn't where your belief needs to be. So unrealistic expectations and misplaced dependencies. Here's an unrealistic expectation. I spend $200 a week on leads and I issue 10 grand. I've seen people spend $200 on leads and issue 10 grand, and it was the worst possible thing that ever happened to them. None of them are in the business because they thought that that was going to happen every single week. That's an unrealistic expectation. They got lucky that week. The next week, they got kicked in the stomach. Okay, so you don't want that. That's an unrealistic expectation. Somebody says, I work 20 hours a week and I make a six-figure income. That's stupid. That's a bad expectation. Are there people that do it? Yes, that's the worst. That's the worst. That's the one that will mess you up the most. You say, I look at so-and-so and they only do this and look what they... No, the vast majority of people that are where you want to be are working an insidious amount of time, obsessively, obsessing over the business constantly. That's how it really works, right? Unrealistic expectations are like the devil. Here's an unrealistic expectation. I can run 7 appointments a week and issue 10 grand. No, you can't. Realistic expectation, 30 appointments every single week, whether I feel like doing it or not. If you do that, is there any possibility at all that you can't go out and write $10,000 week in and week out? There's none. Even if you have a bad week here and there, it's an impossibility that if you do that level of activity, that you won't get to go where it is that you're trying to go. Because here's what happens in the business. The reality is that people way overestimate what they can accomplish in a week or two, but they way underestimate what they can accomplish in 2 to 3 years of consistent, persistent activity. And the reason why is they try to quantify it. The reality is you can't quantify what it looks like to have momentum and getting better. Like you can't put a label on that. It's like John Wetmore said at one of the conferences. It's one of the most life-changing moments I had in Family First Life. He said that his average sale was $1,000 premium. His goal was to issue $250,000 for the year. So his goal was to run 1,000 appointments and close 25% of them. And if he could do that, that he would issue 250,000. By August of that year, he was over 400,000 running that pace. People said, John, what happened? He said, the thing I didn't account for was momentum and getting better. And so none of that happens, though, unless you're spending the money on the leads. Spend the money on the leads. Spend the money on the leads. You know, people say, I don't have $1,000 right now. Well, start with your 300. Go get a credit card. Find another 700. Get yourself $1,000 with the leads. Go turn that into $2,000. Even if you're bad at it in the beginning, look, this is the way I looked at it. My attitude in the beginning was, if I spend $1,000 and I make back 800, I'm still doing pretty good. I only lost 2. See, in every business I'd ever seen was like, you spent money in the beginning to wait to make a profit way down the road, right? So my expectation in the beginning was I could be really bad at it. So if I spent $1,000 and I made back 800, I made less than what I spent. Well, that's called normal business, by the way. But sooner or later, I would get to where I was breaking even. And then sooner or later after that, I would get to where I had a 5, 10, 20-fold profit. And so I just inculcated my mind with this philosophy that I was just going to go through and do the work long enough that I could be profitable like other people that were doing the exact same thing. And if it didn't happen the very first day, that I wasn't throwing in the towel saying, hey, it doesn't work. I know it works. It's not that it doesn't work. It's that people don't work. I've had a gym membership now for years. It's not that gyms don't work. It's that I don't go to the gym and work out. Does that make sense? It's not, gyms aren't scams. It's that people don't work. And that's all it ever is. And when you're building an agency, sometimes people convince you that they're doing the work when they're really not. And they start to get you to believe it, where you're like, man, I don't know. Maybe it is the leads. But then you have people that, we got this guy on the team, Caesar, okay? Like Caesar, his first week writes $10,000 in Pima, Arizona. But like, that shouldn't even be possible. Writes $10,000 his first week in Pima, Arizona off 3-month-old internet leads because he spent $1,000 on leads. Spent $1,500 on leads to write 10. You know how that happened? Because he spent the money on the leads. That's all it ever really is. But there's a lot of smoke. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of distraction, a lot of people saying, well, look at so-and-so and look at this. But in reality, if you spend the money, that will activate the work. Once it activates the work, you can't be that bad at it. You need more at-bats. That's all it is. It's more at-bats. If you sit down with 30 people, if you book 30 and sit down with 20, it is impossible for you not to make an enormous profit. You can literally show up to the appointments and be like, whatever you do, don't buy insurance. And they'll say, hey, I don't want to go through this again. I'm buying it. Really, honest to God, that's honestly the way it works. And the longer you do it, you'll show up to appointments where like they'll have a stack of insurance policies on the desk and they don't have any money. You'll go through the financial inventory. They don't have money. You're like, okay, well, where's all the money? You got all this insurance. And they're like, okay, I want that one for $120 a month. And you're like, okay, let's see if we can get you qualified. And they talk you into it. And people say, Tray, that hasn't happened to me. You know why? You haven't run 30 appointments. People try to make these decisions of like permanent decisions off temporary emotions because you got into 4 houses and 3 of them told you no and 1 said yes. And then all of a sudden you think you're a 25% closer. No, that was just those 4. We can't do a statistical analysis off of 4. You need to run 100 appointments as quickly as possible. And the only way that you're going to get into 100 appointments is to buy enough leads to book 100 appointments. And anything else is just avoidance. Anything else is just wasting time. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm glad y'all watched the training. You guys should all watch the training. But if the training ever gets away from the basics of buy leads, make the dials, go see the people, if it ever gets away from the basics of that, then you've forgotten the main thing. That's the main thing. The main thing isn't to fill your mind with a bunch of happy thoughts so that you feel good about yourself. And that's not it. Like, you could feel good about yourself and go get another job to support your family. Like, just do a bunch of things to give you happy thoughts. to be successful at this, you need to be able to go and make a living for your family. And the only way you can do that is to invest the money in the leads. And so these are the types of conversations that need to happen more often, because I'm seeing a lot of agents that are just confused. And I don't want to say a lot, a few that have made an impact on me, where they have this limiting belief, like they can just spend $500 and then go out and make this massive profit. You can't. Your goal is, let's say I start out, I don't have any money. Let's say I had $300 and that's all I had. Then what I'm trying to do is I'm going to take that $300, I'm going to make a sale. I'm going to make $1,000, and then I'm going to take that entire $1,000 and turn right around and put 100% of that back into leads. You say, Trey, what if I'm behind on my bills? You were behind on your bills when you got here. That's the other thing I've noticed, is that people think like with FFL, you can just fix years worth of bad decisions in 2 weeks because all of a sudden you're at FFL and you have high comp. You can't. Your bad decisions are still there. Your broken financial philosophy and screwed up situation financially is still there. If they were going to repossess the car 2 weeks ago, they're probably still going to repossess your car. But the good news is we could put you in a position where if you're buying enough leads, you can go out and make sure that you can buy another car and they'll never repossess that one and you'll never be in that position again. So if I had $300 and I'm behind on my house payment, I'm buying leads. That's what I would do, right? Now, if I'm in that kind of dire situation, I'll tell you what I would do. I would go get a job that I had a guaranteed paycheck, and then I would make some money from that, and I would take that money, and on Saturday, I'd spend my $300, and I would go make some sales, make some money to buy some more leads, and then I'd take that $1,000 from that commission, and I'd buy $1,000 worth of leads, and then I'd make, $5,000, and I'd take $2,000 of that $5,000, and I'd buy $2,000 worth of leads the next week. And I would go out and I would activate the work. I would do it over and over and over again until I started turning those $2,000 lead bills into $10,000 a week. I wouldn't worry about anything else. Like, I'm not trying to recruit the world if I'm in that kind of dire situation. All I'm trying to do is go out and make a living really, really quickly by sitting down with people that are interested in insurance. And anything I'm doing outside of that is a distraction. It's a waste of time. And honestly, it's not fair to me or my family. And so hopefully people are being honest with you about it. If you're in a bad situation financially, you're not trying to make $300 to keep the lights on. Like that first $300, like let's go get some more leads with that. Like I'm gonna spend the $300, I'm gonna make $1,000, I'm gonna spend the $1,000 on leads, and I'm gonna turn around and make that Monday. The goal is just to keep the lights on long enough so that when those commissions come in, I have $2,000 for leads and I can pay the bills. Those are the people that get ahead the quickest. To think that I'm just going to spend a little bit on leads each and every week and that this magical thing is going to just take care of itself, it's not. That's delusional. It's not going to happen. It won't work unless you work, and you won't work unless you have something to work, and unless you have leads to call, then you don't have anything to work. So leads are the answer. So hopefully that makes sense. That's the main thing in the business. Episode 5, Beyond the Leaderboard. Appreciate you guys jumping on. We'll talk to you guys again next week. And next week, our guest, I'm announcing our guest next week, Robert Kakish, first guest on Beyond the Leaderboard next week. Thanks for jumping on. You guys make it a good one.